We're gonna start off this tutorial looking at 2015 November paper. We'll start from question 1. As you all know, question 1 is the easiest, but I'll add on some extra steps to make things much more clearer. Okay, and here is our first question. For this question, to solve it, you need to actually look for two numbers, which when you add, they give you -9, and when you multiply those two numbers, they give you +20. If you think about it, you'll realize that the two numbers which you add, that will give you -9, and when you multiply, they give you a +20. Those two numbers are -4 and -5. So our solution will look like this. Then you separate these two brackets like this. Sorry, hope you all can see. And that is our solution. Thanks. Now we'll look at our next question. This is our second question. If you look carefully at this question, the text in the bracket is actually a hint. It actually tells you that there are decimal places, which means that this kind of question cannot just be solved using factors. So we need to actually consider using the quadratic formula. Actually, it is the only way in this case. The quadratic formula is as follows. To be able to use the quadratic formula, you first need to know the standard form of the quadratic equation, which is as follows. So when we take our equation here and rearrange it, it will be as follows. Sorry, I hope you all can see what I'm writing. So we take that 4 and put it on the other side. So when we look at our equation and we look at the standard form of the quadratic equation, then we'll see that this 3 here is our A, and this 5 here is our B, and this -4 is our C. Then these numbers are the ones which will substitute into the quadratic equation to find the solutions for x. Let me write it down. As I have said, our A is 3, our B is 5, Then our C is -4. Then we need to substitute these values into the quadratic equation. Then it will look like this. Here we put B, which is 5. This plus or negative sign here simply means that you need to punch this into the calculator in two different ways. In the first case, you'll put it as positive, then in the second case, you'll put it as a negative. Okay. Let me take out my calculator and do the calculation. For the first case, when we put it as a positive, you will find that x is equals to then for our second case, when you put it as a negative, you will find out that x is equals to but remember, the instruction was we need to put it in decimal form and to 2 decimal places. So our solution for x will be 0.959 or -2.26, and this is the solution for 1.1.2. Now moving on to question 1.1.3. I suggest that you pause the video, then you try this question by yourself. Okay, this is how I would solve this question. So we'll divide both sides by 2, then this is what we get. So to solve for x, we need to get rid of this power, which is -5/3. So to get rid of this power, we root by this power. When you punch this into the calculator, you'll find out that the answer is the answer is 1/8, which is the same as 2 to the power of -3. Moving on to question 1.1.4. Again, I advise that you pause the video and try the question as well. It will be helpful to do so for all the other questions to make sure that you actually understand what's going on and to test yourself if you really know what's going on. Okay, so this is how I would solve it. since as you can see that there's a square root on one side, so we'll square both sides to get rid of the square root. Then you expand this. It will be x squared negative 4x plus 4. Check this x to the other side, becomes negative 4x plus x plus that 4 over there, and then you take the negative 2 to the other side. You take the 2 to the other side, then it becomes a negative 2. This simplifies and becomes as follows. Okay, then to solve this, you look for two numbers which when you add they give you a negative 3, and when you multiply them they give you a 2. Those numbers are negative 2, negative 1. So it becomes like this: negative 2 and negative 1. Then you separate these two brackets, so it becomes like this. So and then x minus 1 is equals to 0. So our solution for this question, as you can see, we get two solutions. The answer is x is equals to 2 or x is equals to 1. But when you actually check this, you'll see that okay, for the first case, when you substitute the 2 into the original equation, you get a 0 on this side and you get a 0 on the other side, so it agrees with the equation. And then when you substitute 1 into the equation, you get 1 this side and negative 1 on the side, so these two do not become equal. So we can then conclude that x is equals to 1 is not the solution for this equation. Therefore the only solution is 2. Then we indicate that x is equals to 2 is the only solution for the question. In this question, we look for values of x which will give us a value for the expression which will be less than 0. Okay, so to solve this equation, we need to first find the critical values. And to find the critical values, we first treat this expression as though it were written like this. We factor out the x, then it will become like this. Therefore our critical values are what? X is equals to 0. When we separate these two brackets, x will be equals to 0, and then when we separate the other one, it will become like this: x is equals to negative 7. We consider the critical values. Okay, so the critical values are x is equals to 0 and x is equals to negative 7. Okay, let's first consider this value. Okay, when we take a number less than 0, for example a negative 1, and we substitute into this equation, we'll get what? If we substitute negative 1, we'll get 1 plus negative 7. Then it gives us what? A value which is less than 0. Therefore, we will, in this way, we see that if we take values for x which are what? Less than 0, then our expression will get a value which is less than 0. And then now we consider this other value which is what? Negative 7. Then let's take a value above negative 7, for example negative 6. When we take negative 6, we'll have what? 36 minus 42. So that will give us a negative value. Therefore, it means that we also need to take what? Values for x which are what? Greater than negative 7. Then when you represent this in a graph, it will be as follows. On the left side, you always put the smallest number, which is what? Negative 7. And then on the right side, you place a number which is greater, in this case being what? 0. So if we check this, as we have said that we take values for x which are what? Less than 0. So these values will then be values from here to here. So this graph clearly indicates that we take values from negative 7 to 0. Then this represents our solution for this question. Now we move on to question 1.2. If you check this question, we need to solve this simultaneously because we have x and y in the same equation. So if you think about this, we have squares for these two terms. So if you actually think about it, the square of any number is always positive or 0. For the sum of these two squares, they need to be 0. Therefore, we can conclude that this is equals to 0 and this is also equal to 0. Then we solve these individually. Let's start with this one. To put a square root on both sides, then we have x is equals to x minus 5 is equals to 0, because when you put a square root on this one, you still get a 0. Okay, so x is equals to 5. Then when you take this 5 and substitute it on this other side, you get that it becomes like this. On this side as well, you put a square root on both sides. Then it will become 15 minus y is equals to 0. Therefore, y is equals to 15. Therefore, you have your solutions. X is equals to 5 and sorry about that, and y is equals to 15. We can see that will be all for this question. We'll be moving on to the next one. Now we're looking at the final question in question 1 on the November 2015 grade 12 paper. Okay, so in this question we're asked to find the value of k which will make the equation to have no real roots. Okay, so when you're dealing with roots, you have to know that to find the nature of the root, you use something called the discriminant. The discriminant is calculated by this given formula. This triangle represents the discriminant. This is the equation for calculating the discriminant. Then you need to put this equation in the standard form. It will be as follows. As I explained on the previous question, that you need to understand the concept of the standard form of the quadratic equation to find your value for B, your value for A, your value for C. If you check on the question 1.1.2, you'll see how I determine the values for B, A, and C. So it will become like this. In this case, our B is 1, and then our A is 1 as well, and then our C is negative K. And remember, for an equation to have no real roots, then the discriminant should be less than 0. Therefore, we come here and put it like this. Therefore, it will be like this. This should be what? Less than 0. When you simplify this, you get 1 plus 4k is less than 0. Then 4k is less than negative 1. Then you divide both sides by 4. Then you find out that k is less than negative 1 over 4. Therefore, this means that your value for k should be less than a negative of a quarter for this equation to have no real roots. That's all for question 1. Check out my next video to see how I solve more questions from preceding questions in the question paper. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Thanks.